What happens when the man signing the paychecks grabs a dolly and starts sorting boxes next to the people who have never seen his face? Yarden James stepped out of his rental car and looked up at the squat, beige building in front of him. Store number 4 in his chain of 7 mail and shipping centers. He'd bought the company 7 years ago after the original owner retired, expanded it slowly, and put local managers in place. He'd met the district manager twice. He hadn't met a single store-level worker. He pulled the mirror down and looked at himself, dark brown contact lenses, fake beard glued on tight, and a worn baseball cap pulled low. His voice, deeper and slower than usual. To them, he was Rick, a new transfer from the warehouse in Ohio. The disguise wasn't movie level, but between the size of the company and how little face time he'd had with staff, nobody was going to recognize him. Not here. He walked through the employee entrance. A lanky guy with a radio clipped to his belt looked up from the break room doorway. "You the new guy?" the man asked, his tone bored. "Yeah, Rick, supposed to start today." The man gave a slow nod. "I'm Drew, store manager. We're short 2 people today, so you're gonna jump straight in. Don't slow us down." "Got it." Yarden followed him into the sorting area. The back of the store smelled like cardboard and dust. 2 women were already moving packages. One of them, with her sleeves rolled up and hair tied back, barely looked up. "That's Kelsey," Drew muttered. "Keep up with her and you'll be fine." For the next 2 hours, Yarden did nothing but lift, scan, and stack. Kelsey worked like she was racing a clock, fast, careful, never missing a step. She noticed when a box was mislabeled and flagged it. When a bulky box looked too heavy for the older man next to her, she stepped in without a word. Drew, on the other hand, mostly walked around with his phone in hand and barked orders without lending a hand. Yarden kept quiet and watched everything. It was just after lunch when things started to turn. A tall stack of boxes on a metal cart wobbled dangerously as another worker tried to wheel it around the corner. "Hold up," Kelsey started, but Drew cut her off. "Just push it through. We don't have time to baby every cart. It's over the weight limit," she said. "That thing should be strapped or repacked." Drew rolled his eyes. "We're behind, get it through." The worker did as told. A minute later, the cart tipped and a heavy box slid off, slamming onto the floor inches from someone's foot. Nobody was hurt, but the room went silent. "Should have strapped it," Kelsey muttered under her breath. Drew glared at her. "We're not running a daycare. Think less, move more." Yarden's stomach twisted. He didn't say anything, not yet. But he walked a little slower back to his station, his eyes moving from the boxes to the safety signs posted on the walls, mostly ignored. Straps unused, lifting belts never worn, people rushing, cutting corners. "No training, no checks." Kelsey leaned over and whispered, "You ever work with Drew before?" "No," Yarden said. "Why?" She just shook her head. "He fires people for speaking up. Nobody wants to lose their job over a strap." Yarden tightened his grip on the scanner. The rest of the day was more of the same. Drew barking, people rushing, Kelsey quietly correcting mistakes before something worse happened. One worker with a wrist brace tried to lift a heavy package and winced. Drew walked right by him without a glance. By the end of the shift, Yarden's shirt was soaked through and his back ached. He sat in the break room watching Kelsey refill the paper towel dispenser without being asked. "First day, huh?" she asked. "Yeah, you're not bad. Most new guys slow us down," he nodded. "You always work this hard," she gave a tired smile. "Somebody has to." A few minutes later, Drew walked in, tossing his empty coffee cup in the trash. "All right, people. Same time tomorrow. Rick, don't be late." Yarden forced a nod. He walked out that night with a pit in his stomach. Drew had created a work environment where safety was optional and fear was standard. And people like Kelsey were holding the place together with no credit and no support. Back in his car, Yarden leaned his head against the steering wheel. He never thought he'd see this in one of his own stores. Tomorrow he was going back in, and he wasn't just going to watch. The next morning, Yarden arrived 15 minutes early. The parking lot was still dark, just a few cars scattered across the cracked pavement. He sat in his car for a moment, watching the building. The fluorescent lights inside were already on. He could see silhouettes moving behind the front counter, 2 employees setting up for the day. When he stepped through the employee entrance, the air was already warm and dry. Someone had left the back door cracked to vent the heat. The only sound was the hum of a conveyor belt running idle. A man with a closely shaved head and a limp was stocking toner cartridges onto a shelf near the supply wall. He glanced up, gave a nod, then went back to his task. Yarden didn't recognize him from the day before. "You knew too?" Yarden asked casually. The man looked over. "Nah, been here 6 years, I'm Don. Rick started yesterday." Don gave a short laugh. "Welcome to the fire." Yarden waited a beat. "You always come in this early, gotta. Drew doesn't like things out of place when he walks in." "First time I left a shelf messy, he cut my hours for a week." Before Yarden could reply, the back door slammed shut. Drew walked in with a paper bag and a soda. He didn't acknowledge either of them. "Don, did you fix the pricing labels on the prepaid boxes?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah, yesterday afternoon." "They're wrong again. Fix them before we open." Don clenched his jaw but nodded. Yarden followed Don to the front. The pricing label discrepancy wasn't obvious, just a few cents off on certain sizes of boxes, but it could easily cause disputes with customers. Don moved slowly, his limp becoming more noticeable as he stood for too long. "When that happened?" Yarden asked, nodding toward Don's leg. "Warehouse accident, couple years back, crushed ankle. They moved me here after." "Company help with treatment." Don shook his head once. "Sick days ran out quick, had to pay most of it myself. Insurance barely touched it." Yarden kept his face still. "That right?" "Yeah, you'll learn quick. Here you keep your head down or you get fewer shifts." By 7:30, the rest of the team had trickled in. Kelsey walked straight to the sorting floor, tying on a back brace as she moved. Another clerk, a short woman with thick glasses, began counting out the register till. Her name tag read Ivy. Yarden noticed something else. Everyone looked tired, not just physically. Their movements were efficient but tight. Nobody lingered, no small talk. Even the coffee in the break room sat untouched. Drew gathered them for a quick huddle before opening. "FedEx reps visiting this week," he said. "So keep the floor clean, no complaints, no delays. And if any customer starts asking dumb questions, send them to Ivy. She's soft enough to deal with that crap." Ivy blinked behind her glasses, then looked down at her register. Yarden stared at Drew. The man had just insulted an employee in front of the whole team without even realizing it or caring. Kelsey's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The store opened at 8. By 9, the lobby was full. People shipping returns, sending legal documents, picking up missed deliveries. Ivy handled the front with quiet precision, juggling international forms and frustrated customers. Don stepped in to lift heavier packages when needed. Kelsey moved between the floor and the back, checking tracking numbers, flagging damaged boxes, answering questions from younger workers. Drew stayed near the printers, occasionally adjusting his shirt and checking his reflection in the security mirror. At one point, a middle-aged woman approached the counter holding a crumpled tracking slip. She spoke with a thick accent. "I was told package here, for me." Ivy leaned forward. "Do you have ID?" The woman handed her a folded copy of a utility bill and a photo ID from another country. Ivy took them and typed into the system. Drew, standing nearby, glanced at the ID. "She can't pick up with that." "We don't need fake documents in here," he said loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. The woman looked confused. "This not fake, it is my ID." "I said no," Drew snapped. "Come back with something real." Yarden stepped forward before Ivy could react. "She gave a utility bill and a government ID," he said evenly. "That's standard policy for international pickups, right?" Drew turned toward him, eyes narrowing. "I don't need a lecture from you, new guy. Back to the floor." Yarden didn't move. "She's not doing anything wrong." "You're embarrassing her." The woman looked between them, clutching her bill. Drew sneered. "Talk back again and you're out." Yarden held his ground, his voice lower now. You're violating policy and being openly discriminatory in front of customers. Drew stepped forward. You want to get fired on your second day? Before Yarden could reply, Ivy cleared her throat. Her package is here. I'll log the ID and release it. Per company guidelines. Drew didn't respond, just turned and walked to the back, muttering something under his breath. Once the woman left, Kelsey passed by Yarden. You all right? She asked quietly. Yarden nodded. He always talked to people like that. She gave the smallest shrug. Not always. Depends who's watching. At lunchtime, one of the younger workers, a 19-year-old named Joel, sat alone at the far table, eating crackers and a protein bar. Yarden sat across from him. You don't eat much, he asked. Joel glanced up. Trying to save money, rent went up again. I'm part-time, but they've been cutting hours. How many you getting? Like 15 a week now. Was 25 last month. I asked why, and Drew said I needed to show more hustle. I'm already skipping classes to be here. Yarden nodded slowly. You like the job, it's not the job. It's the way he acts. I caught him calling me the lazy one when he thought I wasn't nearby. I've never been late, never called out. Yarden didn't say anything. Just looked at the half-eaten crackers on the table. That afternoon, a customer came in with a complicated bulk shipping request, 10 large boxes, each labeled for different addresses. Ivy began processing them, but the system froze halfway through. She called Drew over. It's glitching when I try to enter the multiple ship, she said, pointing at the screen. Drew leaned over, tapped a few keys, then snapped. It's user error. Try not to screw it up. I didn't figure it out, he said, walking away. Yarden moved behind the counter, watching Ivy re-enter each address manually, fingers trembling slightly. You okay? He asked. She didn't look up. Fine, just trying not to make it worse. You didn't do anything wrong. She paused, then whispered, I used to love this job. Now I just count the hours. By the time the store closed, Yarden had seen enough. He waited until the last customer left, then walked to the back where Drew was filling out a clipboard. Drew, he said evenly. What? Yarden pulled off the baseball cap, then the beard. Drew blinked. What the hell? I'm Yarden James. I own this company. The room fell completely silent. Kelsey, standing by the trash bin, froze. Ivy dropped a pen. Joel looked like he'd stopped breathing. Drew's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I've spent the last 2 days watching you disrespect employees, violate safety, and humiliate customers, Yarden said. You created a culture of fear and cut corners that put people at risk. Look, you're done. Clean out your locker, effective immediately. Drew stepped forward. You can't just fire me, I just did. Yarden turned to the rest of the team. You've kept this place running in spite of him. That ends now. Tomorrow, things change. He looked at Don, Joel, Ivy, and Kelsey. You've been holding this place together. And it's time someone did the same for you. The next morning, Yarden stood by the front counter in a plain gray polo, no disguise, no hat. He'd made the call late last night, quiet but firm. The regional HR rep arrived an hour before opening, and they'd walked Drew out without a scene. He didn't argue this time, just stared at the floor and left with his name badge still hanging from his belt. By 8:15, the store was open, and the staff moved through their tasks with the same precision, but something was different. The air felt thinner. Cautious glances passed between workers, not toward each other, but toward Yarden. Not fear, uncertainty. Kelsey approached the front, her voice low. So, what happens now? Yarden glanced up from the clipboard he'd borrowed. Now I do what I should have done a long time ago. I listen. She folded her arms, eyes scanning the lobby. We're still short 2 people. Joel's supposed to be off today, but he came in anyway. Noted, he said. I've already asked HR to post for more hires, but I'm not going to patch holes with promises. You're still under pressure. I get that. Kelsey nodded once and turned back toward the sorting room. By mid-morning, Yarden had started shadowing Ivy behind the counter. She didn't say much at first, but she let him observe. Her hands moved quickly through the shipping interface, but every few minutes she'd pause, double-check a form, or glance at the customer line behind her. You memorize all these? Yarden asked, pointing to the customs forms. She gave a short nod. You kind of have to. The system flags you if you enter too many errors. That tracked? Yeah, Drew used to print the monthly error reports and leave them at the register, said it was motivation. Yarden looked down at the printed tape from the receipt machine. You ever get flagged? Couple times early on. The forms change a lot. Once I figured out the codes, I stopped getting marks, but Joel's still learning. His got posted up last week. Yarden lifted his head. Publicly, he didn't say anything. Just took the page down when Drew wasn't looking. A customer approached the counter holding a small parcel. Ivy stepped forward, greeted them, and began typing. Yarden waited until the customer left before speaking again. Why didn't anyone reach out to HR? They tried. Don did last fall. But the report never went anywhere. Drew said he'd handle it internally and then gave Don the closing shifts for a month. Yarden's jaw tightened. That ends today. Ivy didn't respond, but her shoulders relaxed slightly as she returned to the next transaction. In the back, Don was restocking tape rolls when Yarden stepped in. The man moved slowly, his left leg dragging slightly. He didn't look up. Don, Yarden said. Yeah, you ever get physical therapy covered for that ankle? Don chuckled without humor. Nope. We'll look into it and nothing else. You still have the paperwork in a drawer at home. I want it scanned and sent to HR. We'll reimburse every dollar that should have been covered, and moving forward, you're not working alone on stocking duty. Don turned, his face unreadable. You serious? Dead serious. Don nodded, then returned to the shelf without another word. Yarden stepped outside for 5 minutes just to breathe. The sunlight hit hard against the concrete, and the noise from the street felt jarring after hours inside. He dialed his assistant back in the corporate office. I need full safety records, incident reports, and staffing logs for Store 4. Last 12 months. Also check if any complaints were filed and where they stalled. I'll pull it now, the assistant said. Send them directly to my email. He hung up and walked back inside. In the break room, Joel sat at the end table with a stapled packet in front of him, training guidelines. His eyes darted over the pages, one hand holding a pen. You're off today, Yarden said. Joel looked up. They called me in this morning, short again. Who called you? Drew's backup. His friend, I think, Eric. I didn't know if I was allowed to say no. Yarden pulled a chair and sat across from him. You are. If it's your scheduled day off, you're never obligated to come in unless you volunteer. Joel nodded slowly. Okay. What Eric say? Said if I didn't show, he'd have to tell corporate I wasn't reliable. Yarden's voice dropped. Eric doesn't speak for corporate. You want to leave now, you can. Paid for the full day. Joel shook his head. I'm already here, might as well finish it. Yarden leaned back. You've got grit, Joel, that's not the issue, but nobody's threatening your job over hours again. That's done. Joel looked down again at the packet, then flipped the page. At around 2, a woman in a navy blue blazer arrived carrying a leather briefcase. She introduced herself at the front as Camille from HR. Yarden met her in the office and they shut the door. She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward him. I've got Drew's records, you need to see this. Yarden scanned the logs, 3 formal complaints, all closed without follow-up. 2 were from Ivy, 1 from Don. All were marked resolved by management. Who was the escalation point on these? Yarden asked. Camille clicked a few tabs. Regional manager, but the notes are vague. Looks like Drew had a personal connection there. Reassign the regional. Immediately, Camille nodded once. He pointed to the screen. Reopen all 3 complaints. Note that they were suppressed. I want a formal written apology issued to each employee, and I want HR to visit every store in this district in the next 60 days. Camille began typing. And the safety violations? Unreported, no logs. The monthly safety checkboxes were all marked complete. Yarden leaned back in the chair. Which means they were faked. Looks like it. He exhaled slowly. We're not cleaning up a single bad manager, we're cleaning up a broken layer of oversight. Camille closed the laptop. I'll handle it. But it'll take time. Then start now. By late afternoon, the tone in the store had shifted again. Not relaxed, not yet, but there was something quieter, less tension, more rhythm. Ivy trained a new hire who had just arrived from another location, walking her through the register system. Joel helped Kelsey lift a stack of prepaid boxes into the back room. Don sat for 5 minutes between restocks without anyone suggesting he get up. Yarden stood near the front, watching it all. Kelsey approached, arms crossed. "So what's the plan? You sticking around?" "For now." "I've got a lot to fix." She looked toward the back. "We've had new hires before. They burn out fast. If you want to keep people, you need to stop bleeding them out before they start." "I hear you." "You really staying in it this time, or is this just cleanup?" Yarden met her eyes. "I'll be here." "Not as a ghost, and not just when it's broken." She gave a small nod. "Then let's see what happens." He turned back toward the floor, and for the first time since he walked in as Rick, he saw a team that wasn't just surviving, they were waiting to be led. The next 2 weeks didn't fix everything, but they changed the trajectory. Yarden showed up every morning, not in disguise, not in a suit, but in a plain shirt and work boots. He didn't take an office. He didn't ask for daily updates. He just worked side by side with the employees he'd failed to know until now. The first real shift came on a Wednesday when the replacement manager arrived. Her name was Margot. Late 30s, direct, and with a background in logistics that included 3 years overseeing operations for a regional freight hub. She stepped inside the store with a clipboard under one arm and eyes that scanned like she was reading the entire room in seconds. Kelsey watched her from the back of the sorting area. "She the new boss?" she asked Yarden. "She is. She know what she's walking into. She's had the files. But she'll learn faster from you than from any report." Margot called the team together before the store opened. No speeches, just a few clear expectations. "I'm not here to run you ragged. I'm here to make sure this place runs right. That means no skipped steps, no unsafe loads, no games with the schedule. You do your part, I'll do mine. If something's broken, tell me. I won't punish honesty." She looked each person in the eye as she said it. Nobody clapped, but nobody looked away either. By end of day, she'd already rotated the sorting layout to reduce strain on the team, logged overdue maintenance on the conveyor, and flagged the outdated barcode scanner software for corporate review. Kelsey pulled Yarden aside near the trash bins. "She's sharp," she said. "I know. You let her do this her way. She doesn't need me hovering. She's the first manager who's moved a box without being asked." Yarden nodded once. "That's why she's here." The next challenge came from the systems audit. Camille from HR had followed through. What she uncovered left no room for vague reactions. The entire middle layer of district oversight had been compromised. 3 other stores under Drew's former regional manager had mirrored patterns: unfiled safety complaints, manipulated time cards, and pressure on part-timers to work through scheduled breaks without record. Yarden didn't announce anything publicly. He just met with the executive team and restructured the district. The former regional was released the same day. Their replacement started quietly with no press releases, just a seat at the operations table and a mandate to build trust, not numbers. At Store 4, improvements came in inches, not leaps. Joel's hours were restored gradually, tied to his class schedule. When Yarden asked him what he wanted to do long-term, Joel hesitated before saying he was studying supply chain management. "You want in on operations one day?" Yarden asked. "Maybe. Then you'll shadow Camille next month, 1 day a week, paid." Joel blinked. "You're serious." "You've earned serious." Ivy's role shifted too, not in title. She stayed front counter. But Margot began sending her the updated training materials before they rolled out, asking her to flag confusing language. Within days, Ivy had rewritten 2 sections to make them clearer for new hires. "You ever consider training new employees?" Margot asked her one morning. "I've done it unofficially. I want to make it official. You'd get a bump in pay and you'd set the standard." Ivy didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Yeah. I'd do that." The biggest shift happened when a new hire, a former warehouse loader named Mateo, joined the team and was paired with Don for backroom training. On his second day, Matteo tried to lift a 35-pound box by himself. Don stopped him. "You're not here to get hurt. Use the dolly." "I got it," Matteo said. Don pointed to his ankle brace. "So did I." Matteo grabbed the dolly. Later, Don found Yarden near the loading dock. "That kid's gonna work out," he said. "Then let's keep him working safe." Don nodded. "You make that therapy reimbursement happen. It's in your account. Full amount." Don didn't say anything else, just gave a single nod and walked back inside. By the end of the second week, the break room looked different. Not the walls, not the vending machine, but the people. They sat longer. Talked more, not about Drew, not about what had gone wrong, but about the work itself, how to streamline Saturday rush, what to do when the label printer lagged, which tape brand held up better in humidity. Yarden sat with them twice a day. He didn't lead the conversations, he listened. On that Friday, Margot pulled him aside. "I've got a list of things we still need," she said. "Second scanner at the front, updated shelving in the back, and an extra part timer so Kelsey isn't covering 4 rolls when we're low." "Send it to corporate," Yarden said. "I'll approve it myself." She hesitated. "You planning to stay involved with this store directly?" "No, not forever. That's your lane now. You trust me to keep it steady. I trust you to tell me when it's not." She folded the list and pocketed it. "They trust you more now. Not because of what you did, but because you showed up when it wasn't convenient. They deserve better than I gave them. Then keep giving better." Saturday morning, a woman came in with a complicated international package. She didn't speak English fluently. Ivy helped her fill out the form step by step, using a printed guide she'd designed herself. No condescension, no tension, just patience. The woman smiled as she left. Yarden stood near the door, watching it all. Kelsey passed by and said without sarcasm, "Not bad for a Saturday." He looked at her. "How's the pace feel now?" "Still fast, still tiring, but it's not broken anymore." "You carrying less weight?" "I'm still carrying plenty. But now I know someone's got my back if I start slipping." He watched a new hire carry a box the right way, no shortcuts, no rush. "I'll take that." The store wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was functional, it was honest, and it was no longer running on silence and fear. Yarden left that afternoon without a meeting, without a send-off. He just walked out the back door, same as any other employee. No speech, no goodbye. Just a quiet nod to Margot and a final look at the team he now knew by name. Back in his car, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt responsible. He'd seen what happened when leadership disappeared, when numbers replaced people, and he knew now the cost of that distance. He wouldn't make that mistake again, not here, not anywhere.